Hola, mi amigos! Welcome to this week's episode of Video Ferox. I am your guest host, El Mascador di Critico, standing in for Tony, who is a completely different person. Why? Because we find ourselves in the middle of Summer of Santo. That's right, we're going to be watching Santo movies, including Santo and Blue Demon versus Dracula and the Wolfman. So, settle back and let the masked adventure begin.
The time has come. I have chosen you because tonight your body and your soul will join the legion of the undead.
That man Santo is just a damn fool. He still believes in goodness and justice. And the other masked man is also an idiot.
Our vengeance has become an unstoppable force. And now it is my turn. Tonight I will take control over Cristaldi's girl. If we want to take over the world, we need to multiply our species.
Alrighty, welcome back from the trailer to Santo and Blue Demon versus Dracula and the Wolfman from 1972.
This one includes, of course, Blue Demon, who is one of the other big names in Lucha in Mexico. Did a lot of his own movies.
Not nearly as many as Santo did, because Santo did like 50 of these things.
Yeah.
And I think Blue Demon only did like a small handful.
It's also another of the straight up going down the universal horror route of Santo movies, as so many of them often do. This is, I want to say, our second appearance of Dracula in a Santo movie, played by the same actor.
Which, in my headcanon, means that this is a sequel, a direct sequel.
It is, although since timey-wimey stuff happened in Treasure of Dracula, the fact that, but Dracula was killed years ago by this, sorry.
Whatever, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Just repeat to yourself, it's just a show. Maybe you should just relax. But the fact that you have another luchador involved who's standing on fairly equal status, although it's very clear that Blue Demon is the sidekick in this, overall, I mean, it's fun just because you see both of them going on. It's honestly a great cast. Because the guy who plays Dracula is actually very commanding on screen, does a great job.
I would say that the Dracula that they got for this movie, he is in the bottom of the top 10 of my cinema Draculas.
Yeah.
He is really, really good. He's got that poise and charisma and those piercing eyes that Dracula absolutely needs.
Yeah, so he does a great job. They actually have one of my favorite Santo villains in their Renfield character. And outside of that, I think what you also get is just a good, straightforward story, although as straightforward as you're going to get in a Santo movie, of good guys and bad guys, and the villains have at least we know what the villains are going after. They've got a plan. It's an evil plan, but it's a plan.
And now, the script is absolutely nonsensical, and again, the characterizations, you could get a small leaflet out of all the characters, but it's well shot. The Dracula's compelling. I mean, Santo is, of course, always fun. So I think, despite some obvious warts to the movie, sure, I still think this is a very, very solid flick.
Honestly, this is one of the more Saturday morning cartoon plots, which is saying something for a Santo movie. But I think it's especially because, like I said, you've got a lot going on, and you can do a lot more because you have a second hero.
We even looked up what, moving on to the spoiler section, would be in Spanish, but fuck if I can remember what it was now.
It's like Aliones, but I don't think that's right.
That's not right. Well, we're just too great.
You know what? We're going to move on to spoilers now. We tried to be cool, but it's us. we're never going to be cool.
So we open this movie, like so many other Santo movies, with a wrestling match straight out of the gate.
Yeah.
And it's a best of 3 falls, which inevitably means that Santo's going to win the first one, lose the second one, win the third one, because Santo never loses.
Right.
However, I do appreciate that, in fact, it gives the viewers what they want straight out of the gate. You know, it's 5 minutes of action, and then we get a whole bunch of exposition.
But unfortunately for Santo movies, it's my least favorite way for them to represent a match. Because this one is, they very clearly just set up a ring in a studio with a backdrop. You never see a crowd. You hear crowd noises, but it's very clear that this was just something they shot for the movie. And one of the things I've realized, in those cases where they shoot just for the movie, they include a ring announcer dubbed over, who is calling the match. Now, I have a sideline where I run a Wrestling E-Federation on my Twitch channel. And so for the last 2 years, I've been announcing wrestling matches. And you at least, when you're calling a move, that move should actually be happening on screen.
Let's be honest. It's just some dubbing engineer that they got said, here's the script, read the script. And he doesn't know a figure floor headlock from a flying scissors kick versus a pop-up powerbomb.
Right. That part I have to just sort of tune out, because otherwise the part of me that goes, learn what a damn armbar is, gets a little touchy, because when I look at it and go, I know I could do better, because I have. But it's a Santo movie. We have to have a wrestling match. But we get it done, and then we move into the plot.
And pretty much straight away, where we meet Mexican Renfield.
Eric.
His actual name, but I'm never going to remember.
We're never going to call him Eric because it doesn't fit Renfield. He is Renfield.
And so apparently what happened is that 400 years ago, or something like 7 moon cycles and 7 eclipses or something like that, the wizard Gristaldi, in fact, killed Dracula and killed the Wolfman and buried him in their tomb somewhere. Now, for 1 second here, let's put aside that Dracula and the Wolfman are a real thing. There's fucking wizards in the Santoverse?
You know what? With other things that have happened in the Santoverse, that is literally the least surprising thing you could tell me.
He's wrestled freaking Martians, for God's sake. So, you know, wrestling Dracula, not really out of the ordinary.
You're right.
And so what Mexican Renfield needs to do is he needs to go kidnap the descendants of the wizard Cristaldi and use their blood to resurrect Dracula and the Wolfman.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get this exposition dump in between the 3 falls. So, yes, it's kind of on the nose and kind of, exposition heavy. But at least we're surrounding it by action, so yay, go movie.
Right. When Rufus first comes out of his crypt, he's in full Wolfman form, and he's got this yellow shirt.
Yeah, kind of a satin sort of thing going on.
Yeah, which honestly kind of worked when he is a Wolfman, but when he turns into his human form, I looked at him and my first thought was, Luke Cage wants to talk to you about copyright infringement. Sorry. Well, the problem is it's very 70s.
Yeah.
But in all the worst ways.
Whereas in Dracula, he's a traditional, he's got the little neck piece and he's got the cape, and he is essentially Bela Lugosi, but Mexican.
Now, when Rufus puts on modern kind of mod clothing, he looks great. You know, he's got some style. He even talks about, of course, I always look good. He's very vain.
It's a shame that the Wolfman masks didn't live up to the rest of the production.
I mean, they were obviously going for the Jack Pierce, Lon Chaney Wolfman look, but it was a lot of yak hair just sort of haphazardly stuck on people's faces.
It's Lon Chaney by way of Don Post Studios.
You then have one of the more interesting ways to bring Santo into the plot. Now, in Santo movies, sometimes it's, well, Santo is Batman. So why is he there? Because crime. Other times, Santo has a government contact to bring him into something. This one, Santo is dating the niece of the old Professor Cristaldi.
Which is weird because generally we don't get romantic involvements with Santo in these movies.
There are several times that Santo says, stay back, that where I'm going to go be is dangerous. She completely ignores him. You know, they're in a warehouse surrounded by thugs that Renfield has hired. And they partially get out because she creates a distraction, essentially dumping a bunch of stuff on the thugs that let Santo and Blue Demon get the upper hand in their fight. So, in fact, she was very useful. And later, when the climax is happening, and the same thing, don't follow me. This is very dangerous. Her being there
saves the kid.
Yeah. So no, why I call her Mexican Lois Lane is she ignores the sit back for good reason, because you actually need her doing things.
But she's not so much I'm going to go out and get involved in the action, more of I'm going to be behind the scenes and pull the strings as best I can.
Yeah, she's very smart about how she does things. And
everybody in this movie is really smart. I'm shocked at that. Because, I mean, the plan that the bad guys have, I mean, is reasonably strong. And Dracula, okay, he doesn't really get involved in the action at the end, but he's a pretty decent chess master.
Yeah. Now, during the professor's meeting with Santo to explain everything that's going on, we have the grand MacGuffin of the Cristaldi dagger. And it's the dagger that the wizard used to defeat Dracula and the Wolfman, and it has the power to repel evil.
So it's like a cross would be with like in a normal vampire movie, but it's in the dagger form.
Right. To set up the dynamic, you've got Professor Cristaldi, his daughter, his niece, who is Santo's girlfriend,
and then the granddaughter.
His granddaughter, and then a maid/nanny for the granddaughter. So that's the Cristaldi household. And after the professor gives his exposition dump to Santo, he's kidnapped by Renfield.
And this is another, we don't generally get this in a Santo movie. We generally don't get blood. There's not really violence. Now, we don't veer into video nasty territory.
No.
But the Mexican Renfield slashing Cristaldi's throat is actually kind of, well, it's bloody and moist.
And blood drips on Dracula's skeleton, which I appreciate. Okay, you used a good traditional, straight out of Hammer horror. I know that Christopher Lee was resurrected that way at least once.
At least.
Renfield's whole goal is that, he is going to be rewarded with gold from Dracula's treasure. And it just screams, Renfield, you're gonna get betrayed by Dracula at the end. You know this, right? You know that you're not getting out of this movie alive. But before we get into the rest of the plot, I want to point out Renfield, Eric, might be one of the most effective villains in a Santo movie. He's smart. He's aware of what's going on. He knows who he's dealing with. He is actually one step ahead of our heroes most of the movie.
There's this one scene where he's working with Rex and he's like dropping in occasionally and it's like, okay, how's the plot to kidnap the daughter going? And so Blue Demon follows him and he's up in a tree kind of eavesdropping, and Mexican Renfield's like spots him out of a mirror. It's like, oh, wait a second. And goes over and lights Rufus's cigarette. It's like, just play along. So, yes, he's actually really good. And he captures Santo at the end of the movie.
He does. In fact, if he had not had a change of plan, he would have killed Santo. Best villain in a Santo movie ever. But this does then bring us to when the professor disappears and they realize, okay, there's a threat going on here now. Which includes people are disappearing because Dracula and Rufus decide the best thing they can do is turn people into vampires and werewolves to build up their army so that they have a whole group of hench people for when it's time for their big play. Great. So Santo decides, well, I need to bring in somebody, but I've worked with him before. He's top notch. And then we cut to another wrestling match.
And it's Blue Demon versus Ronaldo the Hippie. And it's a good match. I enjoyed it.
As a wrestling match, I think Ronaldo was a legit wrestler. It looked pretty good. Showed off Blue Demon, who a little bit more of a striker than Santo is. Santo's much more a technical grapple wrestler. but still good showing of Blue Demon and his skill. And then they bring him in, and what's fun about this is they're talking, and Blue Demon says, I still have the transistor wristwatch radio, basically a Dick Tracy radio that Santo invented. I've got the transistor watch, so I'll be able to keep in communication. Once again, establishing, as we have before, that Santo is a scientist. That if you're a luchador, you're trained in super science. And then they go off and they start investigating. And again, it's that, as we said, when Rufus appears, because Rufus's big plan is he is going to seduce the eldest Cristaldi girl, the daughter.
And Dracula even calls him out on it. It's like, wouldn't it be a lot easier if you just kidnapped her and killed her? It's like, no. I got game, baby. I'm going to do this.
Now, yeah, it's not sad. I have to seduce her. But so he can kill her on the full moon. And, I love their meet cute is they get a couple of their henchmen to mug her, and then Rufus comes by for the rescue. Rufus succeeds. He does lure the eldest daughter out on the full moon for a date and kills her.
And the interesting way they do this is that this script is always moving forward at lightning speed. So they don't have this drugged out, protracted, I'm going to stalk you and then kill you. No, it's just a shot of the moon and a scream and then cut to the police saying, well, what happened? Where'd she go? The movie's like that all the way through, where it's like Dracula's assembling his army of wannabe vampires, and they've got him. But the next thing we know is that they're chained to a wall. We don't actually see them collecting the victims.
Yeah.
So it's impressive on how lean this script is.
There are the things they did really well. There's a subplot that they want to get all the Cristaldis, and you've got the little granddaughter. And Dracula decides to go after the granddaughter. And they do a great cut of a bat flying out, and then I felt their cut of the bat turning into Dracula as a framing the shot, and even though it was done as essentially a jump cut,
right,
the framing was good enough. It's like, that actually looked good.
Usually with super low budget vampire movies, it's like some sort of weird animation thing, or they'll do a smoke bomb or whatever. No, here it actually looks really good.
But the problem is that Grandpa, before he was kidnapped by Renfield, left the dagger of vampire repellent at the granddaughter's bedside. Dracula can't get near her because the dagger starts glowing. It's like, all right, I'm screwed. I can't do anything. And one of the funny things I realized when watching the movie was we introduce her, then she goes upstairs to bed, and until she needs to be active in the plot again, every time we see her, she's asleep. It's like, you slept for several days straight, child, through this movie. What we find out is they didn't turn her mother into a vampire. She's just like a zombie, I want to say.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I know that Dracula does the hypnotism on her and makes her go and do things, but I don't know if it's...
Well, they stated she's dead.
Yeah.
But she's in a living dead state. They absolutely turn the grandfather into a zombie and use him as bait a couple of times. So at this point, Dracula, since he can't get to the niece directly, he turns her nanny into a vampire. The nanny convinces her from the doorway to wake up, come along, leave the dagger behind. They basically trick Blue Demon into coming to the house.
And then they jump him.
And they capture him. So he's chained to the wall, and they're going to put him through a trial by rickety bridge.
Chekhov's pit of spikes, basically.
Where first one of the Wolfmen is sentenced to death for cowardice.
He's fighting Santo off screen, and he was the one of the Wolfmen that got away. And so he gets back to the place, and Dracula says, well, dude, you ran away. You're no good to me. To the spike pit with you, and you go.
Even though the whole point of coming back was, hey, Santo beat our guys and is coming here.
Yeah, thanks, Dracula. Well, it's pretty well established Dracula's a dick.
Oh, yeah. So Blue Demon is captured. They kill the Wolfman by putting him on, he walks on, not the Wolfman, but a Wolfman, walking on a bridge while Rufus is teetering it, and he falls onto the spikes, and then they're going to do it to Blue Demon. Santo comes into the house. Now, he knows what's going on because Blue Demon was able to activate his transistor watch and warn him. But he gets jumped by Renfield. And Renfield has gotten his hands on the dagger because Niece dropped it. And is going to stab Santo and then goes, wait, I have the dagger. This can defeat Dracula. I could take over.
And that's his downfall.
Because he goes to the niece and goes, how do I use the dagger? And she's like, I have no idea. And he's like, you don't understand. I could. And all of a sudden, the dagger flips in his hand and stabs him.
And he gets a great dying line. It's like, I've committed so many crimes, I'm no longer human. And he keels over dead.
Right.
So it's a great exit for a really good character.
It is. The only complaint I have is we established the great dagger of monster slaying, and the only person it slays is him.
Yeah. It just kind of goes away after that.
Yeah, it's not a point because that's not how the others are defeated. So we then get Santo come in. Blue Demon manages to survive the rickety bridge of death by the timely appearance of Santo. They fight the Mook vampires and werewolves. They have a great moment where Blue Demon is fighting a bunch of people, then Dracula walks in. And he just walks slowly and intently with that great stare. And Blue Demon's like, okay, this is not good. Yeah, Blue Demon is backing up going, this guy might be a problem. More fighting, and eventually, Santo and Blue Demon rush across the bridge, and Dracula and the Wolfman follow.
Santo grabs this kind of rope chain thing because, of course, how are you going to get spikes into your bit by, your chain? And grabs it and swings over and kicks the two into the spike bit. They go.
Yeah. And then after a little bit, they take the girl back to bed. So she's asleep again. What are we going to tell her? We'll tell her it's just a dream. Yeah, your grandfather and mother are dead.
She's going to notice that.
Your mother is, as far as we know, still stuck in the cavern of eternal torment.
Because once they kill Dracula, all his thralls burst into like this sort of smoky haze thing.
And turn into dust.
So yeah, her grandfather and her mother are now dust in the cavern somewhere.
And it's like, okay, we're going to tell her it's a dream. But Mommy and Daddy are in a farm upstate. And Auntie and Santo are going to raise you now.
But no, Santo's got better things to do because we're not done with the movie yet because we've got 3 minutes to go and a wrestling match.
So we have what is known as a tornado tag match of Santo and the Blue Demon versus the two wrestlers they faced earlier in the movie. And
the end.
They win.
Yeah, what else does you expect from a Santo movie? Of course there's going to be that as sort of ending.
We still get 3 matches.
Yeah.
Just one of them was Blue Demon.
And anyone sitting there saying, okay, God, this is kind of boring. I'm going to fast forward past the matches. I'm sorry, what the fuck are you watching a Santo movie for if you're fast forwarding past the matches?
Yeah, that's the movie. And like we said, obviously we don't talk a lot about Dracula because, as you said, he is the behind-the-scenes chess master. But his presence is all through the movie, and when the guy does show up, he commands the screen. I mean, the whole idea that somebody, as we've seen, strong and powerful as Blue Demon, is going to see him and go, whoa.
I'm out.
This is a lot. They earn that by setting him up. And the actor, now he's an Italian actor, right?
Yeah. An Italian actor who came to the Mexican film industry via Venezuela, I think.
Okay.
The guy actually, he played Dracula before in Treasure of the Dracula, like we said. Mm-hmm. He also would then go on a couple of years later to do Santo versus I don't remember which one it was, but he directed a movie. Mm. And that was the one where Santo fights Nazis, which then means we got to go see that.
We got to get that one on one of these days on here, because who doesn't want to see Santo punch Nazis?
I do actually have a complaint about the fights, and particularly notably the end.
Okay.
Now, much like the other Santo movies, choreography doesn't really exist. I take that as part and parcel with the genre. It's fine, sure. Whatever. But the problem is that there's really no music at all in this. Mm-hmm. The fight starts out in the crypt, and there's a little bit of that kind of creepy, mysterious organ music going on. Mm-hmm. And when Dracula finally shows up and does his, I'm going to put, you in the ground, at the very end of the fight, there's that kind of dramatic, heroic sting. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's just these guys grunting and groaning, rolling around on the ground. Mm. It doesn't really work as well as it could have done.
Probably not. In the end, I'm assuming that might have been a dub issue. It could have been a directorial choice. You also always run into, I've said before, the problem of, I think a lot of these guys are just actors. I don't even think they're stuntmen. It's not like they brought in wrestlers.
Well, I know that the guy who was playing Dracula, I mean, he's just an actor and not a stuntman at all.
Right.
So that's why he doesn't throw any fists.
I think part of it is, well, wrestling matches, you don't have the soundtrack going on. So when it's the wrestlers fighting, that could be it. But I see your point.
So, Jeff, shall we go with a final thought? Do you have any final thoughts for me then, man?
This is one I would like to see get more broad knowledge, like some of the other Santa movies, only because it somewhat shows the wider range of the lucha culture by bringing in another luchador and going, yeah, it's not just Santo out there. There are other of these characters that are worth knowing. Also, just, again, the guy playing Dracula is kind of a find, and more people should see his work.
The dynamic between Santo and Blue Demon really does change the tone of the movie. With, you know, unlike something with like Wax Museum where it's just mostly him doing it by himself. Right. So yeah, it does have a new layer of chemistry to it.
If Santo is Batman, and then you can have Blue Demon basically being Robin.
Right.
Which is really what his role was in this movie.
Yes, colorful, fun. The plot is nonsensical, sure. But, I mean, I would probably include this towards the bottom top 10 of this favorite Santo movies.
Yeah.
The script moves. The movie is well-paced, with a couple of exceptions here. So, yeah, I think it's... Go check this fucking thing out.
Yeah, this one's a good one.
All right, well, I guess we'll wrap up for this week, and we'll catch you next week then, won't we?
Dr. Pepper is the friendly pepper-upper, and it never, never, never lets you down. Remember, it's a friendly pepper-upper. Dr. Pepper never, never lets you down.
Frosty, man, Frosty.
Well, that wraps it up for this epic tale of good versus evil. Thank you for your service, El Santo. Next week, El Santo has to battle his most powerful evil foe ever as he faces the vengeance of the Crying Woman. Join us here for that next week. It will be epic, I assure you. Drop us an email. thevideonastyproject@gmail.com is the address. And until next week, drink your milk and stay in school.
This is the song written for the train chase. This is the chase, Rocky and Ken. He tried to kill me with a